Today is Good Friday, the most solemn day in the liturgical year. The day we remember Jesus dying on the cross for our sins and the sins of the world. Our Lenten penitential journey has drawn to a climactic moment in today's reading from the Gospel of John, the Passion, a passage that we probably know very well. In reflecting on the Passion and Jesus' invitation to return to God and find redemption through him, I want to highlight three distinct quotes, each taken from three distinct scenes in John's account of the Passion. First, at the moment of his betrayal and arrest, Jesus challenges Peter with the question, "Shall I not drink the cup that my Father gave me?" Jesus discerned, knew, and accepted the Father's will for him. He embraced it. He surrendered to it. And in surrendering to the Father's will, he would be glorified. So how well do we, in our lives, try and discern God's will, know God's will, and embrace God's will? God's ways can be mysterious, can be hard to make sense out of, and can be quite difficult to live. But who he calls us to be and what he calls us to do is always going to be better in the long run. Much of my education was influenced by the Jesuits, and St. Ignatius left us, through his spiritual exercises, a way of discerning God's will in our lives so that we can then conform our lives to his will. When I go on retreat at Manresa each year, that focus on discerning and embracing God's will is renewed for me. Taking and drinking from the cup the Father offers us is a return to God. The second moment finds us in the trial before the Sanhedrin. And Jesus tells his accusers, "I have spoken publicly to the world." Jesus did, during his public ministry, in both word and action, offer the gospel publicly to the world. Do we in our lives do this? Do we, through word and deed, speak of our faith in Jesus as an integral part of our being? Do we give witness to our Catholic Christian faith within our families, our friends, in workplace and school, and even in the civic square? Giving public witness to Christ will not always be popular or easy. Sometimes it will be quite risky and even dangerous. Is our faith simply a private practice, or does it shine forth for all to see? Earlier this semester, I had the privilege to be with Archbishop Amond and over 400 high school students at the March for Life in Washington, D.C. These young people spoke publicly to the world that day in defense of God's gift of life. Their public witness was a challenge to the world to return to God. Finally, in the scene of the crucifixion, the gospel writer says simply that Jesus, quote, handed over his spirit. Jesus died on the cross and invites us to share in his death so that we too can share in his resurrection. Consider what we need to die to in our lives. In other words, what separates us from a fuller relationship with Christ? The things that we need to eliminate or let go of, beginning, of course, with sin. When I was in college, I attended a tech retreat, which stands for Teens Encounter Christ. And that retreat's central theme is a journey through the Paschal Mystery, which is Christ's death and resurrection. During that tech retreat process, we were challenged to, quote, die to that which separates us from God, and thereby be able to return to him. So conforming to God's will for our life, being a public witness for Christ in our world, and dying to sin. All acts of discipleship that will unite us more firmly with him.